The sound of gunfire echoed through the dusty streets of Silverdale as Brielle Lawrence clutched her 6-year-old daughter Emma's hand tightly, pulling her behind the cover of an overturned wagon. It was 1877, and what had begun as a peaceful day at the general store had erupted into chaos when 3 masked outlaws stormed the bank across the street. Now bullets were flying, and Brielle's heart hammered against her ribs as she tried to shield her daughter from the violence unfolding around them. "Mama, I'm scared," Emma whimpered, her small fingers digging into Brielle's arm. "It's going to be all right, sweetheart," Brielle whispered, though she wasn't certain of that at all. At 26, she had grown accustomed to the harsh realities of frontier life, but nothing prepared a mother for moments like these. The gunfire suddenly intensified, and Brielle heard shouts from the direction of the bank. She risked a glance around the edge of the wagon and saw one of the bandits stumble backward out of the bank's entrance, clutching his shoulder. The other 2 followed, firing wildly behind them as they retreated toward their horses. In that moment, a tall figure emerged from the saloon down the street, a Winchester rifle raised to his shoulder. His movements were deliberate, unhurried, as if the chaos around him meant nothing. With 3 precise shots, he dropped 2 of the bandits where they stood. The 3rd outlaw, panicked, swung his gun toward the stranger. Brielle watched in horror as the outlaw fired, the bullet grazing the stranger's arm. But the man hardly flinched. His next shot caught the outlaw square in the chest, ending the shootout as quickly as it had begun. The street fell eerily silent. Townsfolk began to emerge cautiously from their hiding places, murmuring among themselves. The stranger lowered his rifle and approached the fallen outlaws, checking for signs of life before retrieving a canvas bag that had fallen from one of their hands, the bank's money. It was only then that Brielle got a clear look at their savior. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with sun-weathered skin and eyes the color of a summer storm. A dusty black Stetson sat atop dark hair that curled slightly at the nape of his neck. His clothes were trail-worn but well-kept, and the star pinned to his vest identified him as the law. "That's Sheriff Lawson," a voice beside Brielle said. She turned to find Mr. Peterson, the town's blacksmith, standing nearby. Cole Lawson heard he was coming to take over for old Sheriff Tanner but wasn't expecting him for another week. Brielle watched as the new sheriff handed the money bag to a trembling bank teller before turning toward the gathering crowd. His eyes swept over the townspeople and, for a brief moment, met hers. Something in his gaze made her breath catch a weariness that seemed to go beyond physical exhaustion, a depth of feeling that seemed at odds with the cold efficiency with which he just dispatched 3 men. Emma tugged at her mother's hand. "Mama, is it over now?" she asked, her voice small. "Yes, darling," Brielle answered, finally finding her voice again. "It's over." As if hearing her words, Sheriff Lawson nodded slightly in their direction before turning away to speak with the bank manager. Brielle couldn't explain why, but she felt certain their paths would cross again, and soon. The next morning found Brielle in her small dress shop on Main Street, pinning a hem for Mrs. Holloway's new Sunday dress. The bell above the door jingled, and she looked up to see Sheriff Lawson ducking through the doorway, his hat already in his hands. "Good morning, madam," he said, his voice deep and smooth like well-aged whiskey. "Hope I'm not disturbing you." Brielle straightened, smoothing down her apron. "Not at all, Sheriff. What can I do for you?" "I'm checking in with all the businesses in town," he explained, his eyes taking in the neat rows of fabric bolts and the half-finished garments hanging nearby. "Getting to know the place and its people. Yesterday was quite an introduction to Silverdale." "That it was," Brielle agreed. "Though you seem to handle it well enough." A shadow passed over his face. "Just doing my job, madam." "Brielle," she offered. "Brielle Lawrence." "Cole Lawson," he replied with a slight nod. "I noticed you and your daughter yesterday. You kept her safe, stayed calm." "Not everyone does in situations like that. When you're a mother, you learn to be strong," Brielle said simply. She hesitated, then added, "My husband passed 3 years ago, influenza. Emma and I have been on our own since then." Cole's expression softened. "I'm sorry to hear that, Mrs. Lawrence. Just Miss Lawrence now," she corrected gently. "Or Brielle." Their eyes met, and for a moment neither spoke. There was something in his gaze that made Brielle feel as though he was seeing past her carefully constructed exterior, past the brave face she put on for Emma and the town. The moment was broken when the back curtain parted and Emma burst into the shop, clutching a piece of paper. "Mama, look what I drew at." She stopped short when she saw Cole, her eyes widening. "You're the man from yesterday, the one who shot the bad men." "Emma," Brielle admonished, embarrassed by her daughter's bluntness, but Cole only smiled, crouching down to Emma's level. My name's Cole." "I'm the new sheriff here." Emma studied him seriously. "Did they die, the bad men?" Cole glanced up at Brielle, who gave him a small nod. He turned back to Emma. "Yes, they did. Sometimes that happens when people choose to do very bad things. But my job is to make sure you and your mama and everyone else in this town stays safe." Emma considered this, then held out her drawing. "This is for you. It's our house, in case you need to know where we live, to keep us safe." Cole accepted the drawing with a gravity that matched Emma's own. "Thank you, Miss Emma. I'll keep this close." When he stood, Brielle saw something different in his eyes, a warmth that hadn't been there before. He cleared his throat. "I should continue my rounds. Good day to you both." After he left, Emma tugged on Brielle's skirt. "I like him, Mama." "He has kind eyes. Does he now?" Brielle murmured, watching through the window as Cole crossed the street. "I suppose he does." Over the next few weeks, Sheriff Cole Lawson became a familiar presence in Silverdale. He took his duties seriously, patrolling the streets, mediating disputes, and establishing himself as a fair but firm enforcer of the law. Brielle often saw him from her shop window, tipping his hat to ladies, helping the elderly across muddy streets, or stopping to chat with children who looked at him with awe. They crossed paths regularly in the small town, exchanging pleasantries that gradually evolved into longer conversations. Brielle learned he had come from Kansas, where he'd been a deputy for 8 years. He was 31, unmarried, and had a way with horses that bordered on magical, according to the stablemaster. What Cole didn't speak about was his past before Kansas, and Brielle sensed there were shadows there that he kept carefully hidden. She recognized the look. It was the same one she sometimes caught in her own reflection, the weight of things unsaid, of memories kept tucked away. One evening in late May, as Brielle was closing her shop, a commotion erupted down the street. She stepped outside to see a group of cowboys who had ridden in from a nearby ranch, clearly deep in their cups and becoming rowdy outside the saloon. As she watched, Cole emerged from his office, heading toward the disturbance with measured steps. One of the cowboys, a burly man with a red beard, stepped into his path. "Well, if it ain't the high and mighty new sheriff," the man slurred, loud enough for his words to carry down the street. "Heard you was quick on the draw. That how you solve all your problems, lawman, shooting first." Cole's voice was too low for Brielle to hear his response, but his posture remained relaxed, non-threatening. The cowboy, however, grew more agitated, poking a finger into Cole's chest. "You think you're better than us. I heard about you. Heard you left a trail of bodies back in Kansas. That true, Sheriff? How many men you killed?" Brielle saw Cole's shoulders stiffen slightly, but his hands remained at his sides. The red-bearded man laughed and turned to his companions. "See, boys, he don't deny it. Regular killer with a badge, that's what we got here." What happened next was so fast Brielle barely registered the movement. One moment the cowboy was laughing, the next he was face down in the dirt, Cole's knee in his back and his arms wrenched behind him. "That's enough," Cole said, his voice carrying clearly now. "You and your friends can sleep it off in my jail, or you can head back to your ranch peacefully. Your choice." The fight seemed to drain out of the cowboy beneath him. All right, we'll go." Cole released him and stepped back, watching as the chastened group mounted their horses and rode out of town. Only then did he notice Brielle standing outside her shop, watching. He walked toward her, his expression unreadable in the gathering dusk. "You shouldn't be out alone after dark, Miss Lawrence," he said when he reached her. "I was just closing up," she replied. "That was well handled." Cole glanced back toward where the cowboys had disappeared. "Better than the alternative." "Is it true?" Brielle asked before she could stop herself. "What he said about Kansas." Cole's eyes met hers, and in them she saw conflict, as if he was weighing how much to tell her. Finally, he sighed. Some of it. I've had to use my gun more times than I care to remember. It's not something I'm proud of, even when it was necessary. Brielle surprised herself by reaching out to touch his arm lightly. Thank you for being honest. He looked down at her hand on his arm, then back to her face. It's getting dark. Let me walk you home. The walk to Brielle's small house on the edge of town was filled with a comfortable silence. As they approached, lights glowed warmly in the windows, and they could see Mrs. Abernathy, the widow who watched Emma when Brielle worked late, moving about inside. Thank you for the escort, Sheriff, Brielle said when they reached her gate. Cole, he corrected gently. When I'm not wearing the badge, I'm just Cole, Brielle smiled. Good night then, Cole, he tipped his hat. Good night, Brielle. As she watched him walk away, Brielle felt a flutter in her chest that she hadn't experienced in years, not since Thomas had first courted her. The realization both thrilled and terrified her. Inside, after Mrs. Abernathy had left and Emma was tucked in bed, Brielle sat by the window, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. She thought of Cole's eyes, of the gentleness with which he'd spoken to Emma, of the strength and restraint he'd shown with the drunken cowboys. Thomas, she whispered to the night, what would you think of him? There was no answer, of course, but the breeze that stirred the curtains felt almost like a caress against her cheek, and Brielle allowed herself, for the first time in 3 years, to imagine a future that included someone other than just her and Emma. Summer arrived in Silverdale with scorching heat and the promise of new beginnings. Brielle's dress shop thrived as ladies ordered new summer frocks, and she often worked late into the evening to keep up with demand. Emma, out of school for the summer, spent her days helping in the shop or playing with friends under the watchful eyes of the town's mothers. Cole had settled into his role as sheriff, earning the respect of most townsfolk with his fair-handed approach to law enforcement. He had also, to Brielle's private delight, begun to find reasons to stop by her shop almost daily sometimes to inform her of town news. Other times to bring Emma a piece of candy or a small wooden toy he'd whittled himself. One sweltering afternoon in early July, Brielle was struggling with a delivery of heavy fabric bolts when Cole appeared at her door. Need a hand, he offered, already moving to take the bolt from her arms. Thank you, she said, wiping perspiration from her brow. These summer deliveries are always the heaviest, it seems. Cole easily carried 2 bolts at once to the shelves she indicated. Where's Emma today? With Sarah Jenkins and her mother at the creek, Brielle replied. It's too hot to keep her cooped up in here. Cole nodded, returning for more fabric. Too hot for you to be working so hard, too, Brielle laughed. Bills don't pay themselves, I'm afraid. When the last bolt was shelved, Cole hesitated, then said, Actually, I came by to ask you something. The town's planning an Independence Day picnic next week. There'll be food, games for the children, even some music for dancing. He cleared his throat. I was wondering if you and Emma might like to attend, with me. Brielle felt her cheeks warm and not from the heat. As your guests. Cole's eyes held her steadily. As my companions, yes, if you'd like. We would, Brielle said, her voice softer than she intended. Very much. The smile that spread across Cole's face transformed him, erasing the usual gravity of his expression and revealing a dimple in his left cheek that Brielle had never noticed before. She found herself smiling back, a light, buoyant feeling expanding in her chest. The 4th of July dawned clear and marginally cooler than the preceding days. Brielle dressed Emma in a new blue dress she'd made specially for the occasion, adorned with red ribbons. For herself, she chose a cream-colored dress with delicate embroidery at the collar and cuffs, her finest creation, saved for special occasions. As promised, Cole arrived at their door precisely at 10 o'clock. He wore a clean white shirt and dark trousers, his badge polished to a shine on his vest. When Brielle opened the door, he stood speechless for a moment, hat in his hands. You look beautiful, he finally said, his eyes taking her in with undisguised admiration. As do you, Brielle replied, feeling suddenly shy. I mean handsome, you look very handsome. Emma darted between them, breaking the moment. Sheriff Cole, do you like my dress? Mama made it special for today. Cole crouched down, giving Emma's outfit proper consideration. It's the prettiest dress I've ever seen, Miss Emma, almost as pretty as the young lady wearing it. Emma giggled, then grabbed his hand. Will there be lemonade at the picnic, and games? Mama said there might be sack races, all of that and more, Cole promised, rising and offering his other arm to Brielle. Shall we, ladies? The town square had been transformed for the celebration. Red, white, and blue bunting draped from every available surface. Tables groaned under the weight of potluck offerings, and a small band of local musicians tuned their instruments on a makeshift stage. Children darted about excitedly, while adults gathered in conversational clusters. As they entered the square, Brielle was acutely aware of the glances and whispers their arrival generated. Being seen publicly with Cole like this would certainly set tongues wagging, but to her surprise, she found she didn't mind. The day passed in a haze of pleasure. Emma participated enthusiastically in every children's game, proudly showing Cole her prizes and seeking his approval. For his part, Cole treated her with the same serious attention he gave to adults, listening to her childish observations and responding thoughtfully. As the afternoon waned, the band struck up a livelier tune and couples began to gather for dancing. Emma had found friends to play with, safely within view but thoroughly occupied with a game of tag. Cole turned to Brielle, extending his hand. Would you do me the honor? She hesitated only briefly before placing her hand in his. I should warn you, it's been some time since I danced. That makes two of us, he admitted, leading her to where other couples were forming a circle. They joined the Virginia reel, moving through the patterns with increasing confidence. Cole's hand was warm and steady when it met hers, and the few times their eyes met during the dance, Brielle felt that same flutter in her chest. When the dance ended, they were both laughing, slightly breathless. You're full of surprises, Sheriff Lawson, Brielle said as they moved away from the dancing area. You're quite light on your feet for a man who spends his days on horseback. Cole smiled, that dimple appearing again. My mother insisted all her sons learn to dance properly. Said a man who could dance would never lack for female company. Wise woman, Brielle replied, feeling bold in the happiness of the moment. Was she right? Until today, I wasn't sure, Cole said, his voice dropping lower. Now I think she might have been onto something. The intensity of his gaze made Brielle's breath catch. For a wild moment, she thought he might kiss her right there, in front of the entire town. Instead, he reached out and gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek for just a heartbeat longer than necessary. The spell was broken by Emma's arrival, flushed and excited. Mama, Sheriff Cole. They're going to have the tug of war soon, and Mr. Wilson says Sheriff Cole has to be on his team. Cole laughed, looking at Brielle with a question in his eyes. She nodded. Go ahead, we'll be cheering for you. As promised, Brielle and Emma stood at the sidelines, calling encouragement as Cole and 5 other men pulled against an opposing team in the tug of war. Cole's strength was evident as he anchored his team, his muscles straining against his shirt as they gradually pulled their opponents across the line to victory. Emma jumped up and down, clapping wildly. You won, Sheriff Cole. Cole rejoined them, slightly winded but grinning. Couldn't let you ladies down, could I? As the sun began to set, families spread blankets on the grass for the promised fireworks display. Cole had secured a spot on a small rise, slightly removed from the main crowd but with an excellent view of the night sky. Emma, exhausted from the day's excitement, curled against Brielle's side on the blanket Cole had brought. Within minutes, her eyes were drooping despite her protests that she wasn't tired. You've had quite a day, little one, Cole said, gently brushing Emma's hair from her forehead. Rest a bit before the fireworks. Promise you'll wake me, Emma mumbled, already half asleep. Promise, Cole assured her. As Emma drifted off, Brielle found herself watching Cole. In the fading light, his profile was strong against the darkening sky, his expression peaceful as he gazed out over the town. Thank you for today, she said softly. It's been wonderful. Cole turned to her, his eyes reflecting the last golden rays of sunlight. For me as well. He hesitated, then added, Brielle, I want you to know that a loud bang interrupted him as the first firework exploded overhead, a burst of red and gold against the twilight sky. Emma stirred immediately, sitting up with a gasp of delight. "Look, Mama, look, Sheriff Cole, it's so pretty." For the next 20 minutes, they watched as the sky bloomed with color and light. Emma sat between them, her small face turned upward in wonder. Brielle was achingly aware of Cole beside her, of his arm occasionally brushing hers as they pointed out particularly beautiful bursts. When the final explosion faded and the crowd began to disperse, Emma was once again fighting sleep. Cole lifted her easily into his arms. "I can carry her," he offered as they began the walk home. Brielle nodded gratefully. "She's getting heavier by the day, it seems." They walked in comfortable silence, Emma's head nestled against Cole's shoulder. The streets were quiet, most townsfolk still at the square or making their way home in groups. When they reached Brielle's house, Cole carefully transferred the sleeping Emma to her mother's arms. "I'll see you safely inside." Once Emma was tucked into bed, Brielle rejoined Cole in her small sitting room. A single lamp cast soft shadows across the walls, creating an intimacy that made Brielle's heart race. "Would you like some coffee?" she offered, suddenly unsure what to do with her hands. Cole shook his head. "No, thank you, I should be going," but he made no move toward the door. Instead, he took a step closer to her. "Brielle, what I was trying to say earlier before the fireworks." She looked up at him, hardly daring to breathe. "Yes, I care for you," he said simply. "For you and for Emma, more than I expected to, more than I thought I could after everything." Brielle felt tears prick at her eyes, though she couldn't have said why. "I care for you too, Cole." He reached for her hand, holding it gently between both of his. "I know it hasn't been long, and I know you have Emma to consider. I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give. I just wanted you to know." Brielle studied their joined hands, then looked up to meet his gaze. "After Thomas died, I never thought I'd feel this way again." "It frightens me a little." "It frightens me too," Cole admitted. "But some things are worth being afraid for." In the soft lamplight, with Emma sleeping peacefully in the next room and the echo of fireworks still hanging in the air, Brielle made a decision. She stood on tiptoe and pressed her lips gently to Cole's. The kiss was brief, almost chaste, but when she pulled away, Cole's eyes were dark with emotion. He touched her cheek reverently, as if she might shatter beneath his fingers. "Good night, Cole," Brielle whispered. "Good night, Brielle," he replied, his voice rough with feeling. "I'll see you tomorrow." After he left, Brielle stood for a long time at the window, watching his figure disappear down the moonlit street. Something had changed between them tonight, something irrevocable and precious. Whatever came next, she knew with certainty that her life and Emma's would never be the same. The weeks following the 4th of July celebration were the happiest Brielle had known since before Thomas's death. Cole became a regular visitor at their home, joining them for supper 2 or 3 times a week, and often spending Sunday afternoons with them after church. Emma blossomed under his attention, eagerly showing him her drawings and schoolwork, basking in his praise and gentle guidance. For Brielle, watching the bond grow between her daughter and Cole brought both joy and a lingering fear. Emma had been so young when Thomas died that she had few memories of her father. Now, at 6, she was forming an attachment to Cole that could devastate her if things didn't work out between them. These worries were on Brielle's mind one August evening as she and Cole sat on her porch after Emma had gone to bed. The night was warm, crickets chirping in the darkness beyond the circle of lantern light. Cole's arm rested comfortably across the back of the bench they shared, not quite touching her shoulders but close enough that she could feel his warmth. "You're quiet tonight," Cole observed, his voice low so as not to disturb the peaceful evening. "Something troubling you?" Brielle hesitated, then decided honesty was best. "I'm concerned about Emma, about how attached she's becoming to you." Cole was silent for a moment, considering. "And that worries you because?" "Because if this," she gestured between them, "if we don't work out, she'll be heartbroken. She's already lost one father." Cole's arm slipped from the bench to wrap around her shoulders, drawing her closer. "Brielle, I understand your concern. But I need you to know that I don't enter into relationships lightly. When I care for someone, it's not temporary." Brielle leaned into his embrace, taking comfort in his solid presence. "I believe you mean that, but life is unpredictable. Thomas and I thought we had decades ahead of us." "That's true," Cole acknowledged. None of us knows what tomorrow brings, but that's exactly why we should embrace the good things we find today. He turned slightly to face her. I'm not asking you to stop being cautious, just to consider that maybe sometimes the risk is worth taking. Brielle looked up at him, studying the earnest expression on his face, the depth of feeling in his eyes. You're a good man, Cole Lawson. I try to be, he said, his voice dropping to almost a whisper as he leaned in to kiss her. Unlike their first kiss, this one lingered, deepening as Brielle's arms wound around his neck. When they finally parted, both were breathing more quickly, and Brielle could feel the rapid beat of Cole's heart beneath her palm on his chest. I should go, Cole said reluctantly, though he made no move to release her. It's getting late. Brielle nodded, equally reluctant to end the moment. Will you join us for supper tomorrow? Try and stop me, Cole replied with a smile, finally rising and helping her to her feet. Sweet dreams, Brielle. She watched him walk away, her lips still tingling from his kiss. Sweet dreams, she whispered to the night. The next day dawned hot and oppressive, the air thick with humidity that promised an afternoon thunderstorm. Brielle was in her shop, working on a wedding dress for the banker's daughter, when Deputy Miller burst through the door, his young face flushed with urgency. Miss Lawrence, you need to come quick, it's Emma. Brielle's heart lurched painfully. Emma, what's happened? She was playing by the creek with the other children, Miller explained breathlessly. There was a flash flood from the rain upstream. The water came up sudden-like. Most of the children got out, but Emma and little Billy Thompson got caught in it. Sheriff Lawson went in after them. Brielle was already moving, rushing past the deputy and into the street. Where are they? Take me there now. They ran through town toward the creek that curved around the eastern edge of Silverdale. A crowd had gathered on the banks, many people soaking wet, all looking downstream with anxious expressions. Brielle pushed through them frantically. Emma, where's my daughter? Mrs. Jenkins turned, her face pale with worry. Brielle, thank God you're here. Cole got to them about a quarter-mile downstream where the creek widens. They've taken the children to Doc Sullivan's office. Without waiting to hear more, Brielle ran toward the doctor's house on the other side of town, her heart pounding with fear. When she burst through the door, Dr. Sullivan was just emerging from an examination room. Where is she? Is she all right? Brielle demanded, grabbing the doctor's arm. Sullivan's kind face softened. She's going to be fine, Brielle. She swallowed some water and has a few scrapes, but Sheriff Lawson got to her in time. She's a lucky little girl. He nodded toward the room behind him. Go on in, she's been asking for you. Brielle rushed into the room to find Emma lying on a small bed, a blanket tucked around her. Her hair was still damp, her face pale but alert. Beside her sat Cole, his clothes soaked and muddy, his hair plastered to his head. Mama, Emma cried when she saw Brielle. Brielle flew to her daughter's side, gathering her into a fierce embrace. Oh, my darling, are you hurt? What happened? The water came so fast, Emma said, her voice small. I was scared, but Sheriff Cole saved me. He jumped right in and got me and Billy both. Brielle looked over Emma's head at Cole, who sat watching them with exhaustion evident in every line of his body. Only then did she notice the bandage on his forearm, stained with blood. You're hurt, she said, reaching across Emma to touch his arm. Cole shook his head dismissively. It's nothing. Got caught on some debris in the water. Doc already patched me up. He was so brave, Mama, Emma insisted. The water was really strong, but he didn't let go of me, not even once. Brielle felt tears burning behind her eyes. Thank you, she whispered to Cole, the words wholly inadequate for the depth of her gratitude. Cole simply nodded, his eyes conveying what words could not, Doctor. Sullivan insisted on keeping Emma for a few hours of observation, though he assured Brielle it was just a precaution. Cole, despite Brielle's protests that he should go home and rest, refused to leave their side. By late afternoon, Emma was pronounced fit to go home, with instructions to rest for the next day or two. Cole carried her the entire way back to their house, despite his own obvious exhaustion. Once Emma was settled in her bed with a cup of hot chocolate and a promise from Cole to return the next day, Brielle finally allowed herself to process the day's events. In the kitchen, away from Emma's ears, she turned to Cole, who stood dripping on her floor, still in his wet clothes. You could have been killed, she said, her voice breaking. Both of you. Cole's expression was somber. But we weren't. Emma's safe, that's all that matters. How can I ever thank you? Brielle asked, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. If anything had happened to her, don't. Cole interrupted gently, crossing to her and taking her hands in his. Don't think about what might have happened. She's fine. A little shaken up, but children are resilient. Brielle looked up at him through her tears. You need to get out of those wet clothes before you catch your death. Cole's mouth quirked in a half smile. Are you trying to get me undressed, Miss Lawrence? Despite everything, Brielle found herself laughing through her tears. I have some of Thomas's old things that might fit you. Go change in the washroom. I'll make you some coffee. When Cole emerged a few minutes later wearing Thomas's clothes, Brielle felt a strange confluence of past and present. The trousers were slightly short on Cole's taller frame, but otherwise the fit wasn't bad. Seeing him in her late husband's shirt should have felt wrong, but somehow it didn't. Better, she asked, handing him a steaming cup of coffee. Much, he replied, accepting the cup gratefully. Thank you. They sat at the kitchen table in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the events of the day settling around them like dust after a storm. I can't lose her, Brielle said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. After Thomas, she's all I have. Cole reached across the table to take her hand. You haven't lost her, and you have more than just Emma, Brielle. You have friends in this town, people who care about you. He paused, then added softly, and you have me, if you want me. Brielle met his gaze, seeing in his eyes the same emotion that was threatening to overwhelm her. I do want you, Cole, I'm just so afraid. Of what? Of everything, she admitted. Of loving someone and losing them again, of Emma getting hurt, of not being enough. Cole squeezed her hand. Brielle, you are more than enough. You're the strongest woman I've ever known. And as for losing people, he sighed heavily. I can't promise you that won't happen. Life doesn't offer those kinds of guarantees, but I can promise you that for as long as I'm able, I'll be here for you and for Emma. Brielle rose from her chair and moved around the table to where Cole sat. Without a word, she bent and kissed him, pouring all her fear and gratitude and burgeoning love into the contact. Cole's arms came around her waist, drawing her onto his lap as the kiss deepened. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Brielle rested her forehead against his. Stay tonight, she whispered. I mean just to be near. I don't want to be alone after today. Cole nodded, understanding in his eyes. I'll sleep on the sofa. That night, after checking on Emma one last time, Brielle lay in her bed listening to the quiet sounds of Cole moving about in her sitting room. There was something profoundly comforting about knowing he was there, just on the other side of the wall. For the first time since Thomas's death, the house felt truly like a home again. As summer gave way to autumn, Cole's presence in their lives became so natural that Brielle could hardly remember a time when he hadn't been there. He didn't stay over again after that first night, both of them conscious of propriety and of setting an example for Emma, but he was a daily visitor, often taking his meals with them and helping Emma with her lessons. The town had long since accepted their relationship, though Brielle occasionally caught disapproving glances from some of the more conservative matrons. She found she cared less and less what others thought. Cole made her happy. He made Emma happy. That was what mattered. One crisp October afternoon, Cole appeared at the dress shop just as Brielle was closing up. His expression was unusually serious, and he seemed almost nervous as he removed his hat. You have time for a walk, he asked. I need to talk to you about something. Brielle felt a flutter of anxiety. Of course, Emma's with Mrs. Abernathy until supper. Is everything all right? Everything's fine, Cole assured her quickly. Better than fine, actually, just something I need to discuss with you. They walked toward the edge of town in companionable silence, Cole leading them to a small rise overlooking Silverdale. The trees were ablaze with autumn color, and the late afternoon sun cast a golden glow over the landscape. It's beautiful up here, Brielle remarked, breathing in the crisp air. I don't come this way often enough. Cole stood beside her, gazing out over the town. I found this spot my first week here. I come up sometimes when I need to think. And what are you thinking about today? Brielle asked, turning to face him. Cole took a deep breath, then reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. Brielle's heart began to race as he opened it to reveal a simple but elegant gold ring with a small diamond that caught the sunlight. "I'm thinking about how much I love you, Brielle Lawrence," Cole said, his voice steady despite the emotion evident in his eyes. "About how I want to spend the rest of my life with you and Emma, about how I want us to be a family." Tears filled Brielle's eyes as Cole dropped to one knee before her. "Brielle, will you marry me? Will you let me be a husband to you and a father to Emma?" For a moment, Brielle couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. Then, with a cry of joy, she launched herself into Cole's arms, nearly knocking him backward. "Yes," she whispered against his neck. "Yes, Cole Lawson, I will marry you." Cole's arms tightened around her, and when he pulled back to slip the ring onto her finger, Brielle saw that his eyes were damp as well. "I've been carrying this ring for weeks," he admitted, waiting for the right moment. Brielle admired the way the diamond caught the light. "It's beautiful, Cole." "It was my grandmother's," he said. "My mother gave it to me before she passed, said to save it for the woman who captured my heart." He kissed her gently. "That's you, Brielle. It's always been you, even before we met." They shared another kiss, this one longer and filled with promise. When they parted, Cole's expression grew more serious. "There's something else we need to discuss," he said. "Something I should have told you before now, but I wanted to be sure of us first." Brielle felt a flicker of concern. "What is it?" Cole guided her to a fallen log where they could sit side by side. "You know I came here from Kansas, but I've never told you much about my life there or before." Brielle nodded. "I assumed you would tell me when you were ready." "I'm ready now," Cole said, taking her hand. "I was married once before, Brielle. Her name was Rebecca. We were young, just 21 when we wed. She died in childbirth 2 years later along with our son." Brielle squeezed his hand, her heart aching for the pain she heard in his voice. "Oh, Cole, I'm so sorry." Cole's eyes were distant, looking back into a past Brielle could only imagine. "It was a long time ago, almost 9 years now, but losing them, it broke something in me. I couldn't stay in our hometown where everything reminded me of her, so I drifted. Ended up as a deputy in Kansas, threw myself into the job because it was easier than feeling." He looked at her then, his gaze clearing. "When I came to Silverdale, I wasn't looking for anything beyond a fresh start. Then I saw you that first day, shielding Emma from the gunfight, and something stirred in me that I thought had died with Rebecca." Brielle raised a hand to his cheek. "Thank you for telling me." "There's more," Cole said. "After Rebecca died, I made a promise to myself that I'd never risk that kind of pain again, never let myself care that deeply for anyone. For years, I kept that promise." He brought her hand to his lips. "Until you and Emma. And now," Brielle asked softly. "Now I know that the only thing worse than risking that pain would be missing out on a life with you because I was too afraid to try again." Brielle leaned forward to kiss him gently. "We've both lost people we loved, Cole, but maybe that makes what we've found together even more precious." Cole nodded, drawing her close. "That's exactly what I've come to believe." They sat together as the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Brielle's mind was already racing ahead to their future together, a wedding, perhaps in the spring when the wildflowers bloomed, Cole officially becoming Emma's father, maybe even more children someday. "When shall we tell Emma?" she asked as they finally rose to head back to town. Cole smiled, taking her hand as they walked. "Tonight, I've something for her too, actually." When they returned to Brielle's house, they found Emma at the kitchen table, carefully practicing her letters under Mrs. Abernathy's watchful eye. The older woman took one look at their joined hands and Brielle's glowing face and seemed to intuit what had happened. "Well now," she said, gathering her shawl, "I think my work here is done for the evening. Good night, all." After Mrs. Abernathy had left, Emma looked up from her slate. "Why is Mrs. Abernathy smiling so big? And why are you smiling too, Mama, and Sheriff Cole?" Brielle exchanged a glance with Cole, who nodded encouragingly. "Emma, sweetheart, we have something very important to tell you." Emma put down her chalk, suddenly alert. "What is it?" "Sheriff Cole has asked me to marry him," Brielle said, moving to sit beside her daughter. "And I've said yes." Emma's eyes widened. "Marry, like be his wife, and he'll live here with us." "That's right," Cole said, kneeling beside Emma's chair. "If that's all right with you, of course." Emma seemed to consider this seriously. "Will you be my papa then?" Cole's voice grew husky with emotion. I would be honored to be your papa, Emma. In fact, he reached into his pocket and withdrew a small package wrapped in tissue paper. I have something for you. Emma unwrapped the gift carefully to reveal a delicate silver locket. It's so pretty. Open it, Cole encouraged. Inside was a tiny photograph of Brielle on one side. The other side was empty. That's for a picture of all three of us, Cole explained, after the wedding. Emma threw her arms around Cole's neck. I want you to be my papa, Sheriff Cole. Can I call you papa now, or do I have to wait until after the wedding? Cole laughed, hugging her tight. You can call me papa anytime you like, Emma. Over Emma's head, his eyes met Brielle's, and the love she saw there made her throat tight with emotion. They were going to be a family, a real family. The thought filled her with a joy so complete it was almost overwhelming. Later that night, after Emma had gone to bed still clutching her new locket, Brielle and Cole sat close together on the porch swing. The night was cool but not cold, the stars bright overhead. She took the news well, Cole said, his arm around Brielle's shoulders. Brielle laughed softly. She's been dropping hints for months. Last week she asked me outright why you couldn't just live with us all the time instead of in your room above the jail. Cole chuckled. Smart girl. She takes after her mother. When should we have the wedding? Brielle asked, nestling closer to his warmth. I was thinking perhaps in the spring. Cole was quiet for a moment, then said, What about Christmas? Not Christmas Day itself, but perhaps the week between Christmas and New Year. It's a special time of year, and it would give Emma the gift of starting the new year with our family complete. Brielle considered the idea. Christmas was less than 3 months away, but a small town wedding wouldn't require extensive planning. Christmas it is, she agreed, turning her face up for his kiss. As their lips met, Brielle felt a sense of rightness of coming home. Whatever the future held, they would face it together, she, Cole, and Emma. A family bound not by blood but by something equally strong, choice and love and the promise of tomorrow. The news of their engagement spread quickly through Silverdale. Most townsfolk offered hearty congratulations, though a few expressed surprise at the speed of their courtship. Brielle found herself fielding questions about wedding plans everywhere she went, while Cole endured good-natured ribbing from the men about settling down. Emma, for her part, was ecstatic. She proudly told anyone who would listen that Sheriff Cole was going to be her papa, and she took to calling him that immediately, much to Cole's evident delight. She also became Cole's shadow whenever possible, following him on his rounds when Brielle allowed it, peppering him with questions about his work and his life before Silverdale. One afternoon in early November, Brielle was fitting Mrs. Wilson for a new winter coat when Emma burst into the shop, her cheeks flushed with cold and excitement. Mama. Papa says there's going to be a cattle drive coming through next week, and he says I can watch from his office window if you say it's all right. Brielle exchanged an amused glance with Mrs. Wilson. Did he now? And where is your papa? Right behind her, Cole said, appearing in the doorway. Sorry for the interruption, ladies. Someone was too excited to wait outside as promised. He gave Emma a mock-stern look that made her giggle. That's quite all right, Sheriff, Mrs. Wilson said warmly. It's lovely to see a child so happy. You're a fortunate man. That I am, madam, Cole agreed, his eyes meeting Brielle's across the room. After Mrs. Wilson had left with promises to return for her final fitting, Brielle turned to Cole. A cattle drive, Cole nodded. 1,500 head coming down from the North Range to winter pasture. They'll pass just east of town. It's quite a sight, thought Emma might enjoy seeing it. Can I, Mama, please? Emma begged, bouncing on her toes. Of course you can, Brielle agreed. As long as you stay with Papa and follow his instructions exactly. Emma's face lit up. I will, I promise. She turned to Cole. Can I go tell Sarah? Her papa never takes her to see interesting things. Cole laughed. Go ahead, but be back before supper. As Emma dashed out, Brielle shook her head fondly. She adores you, you know. The feeling is entirely mutual, Cole replied, crossing to take her in his arms, as is my adoration for her mother. Brielle allowed herself to be pulled against his chest, relishing the solid warmth of him. Careful, Sheriff. People will talk if you keep embracing me in public like this. Let them talk, Cole murmured, bending to kiss her lightly. In less than 2 months, you'll be my wife. I'm entitled to some liberties." Brielle laughed, pushing him away playfully. "Go back to work, Cole Lawson. I have dresses to finish if I'm to have a proper wedding gown by Christmas." Cole released her reluctantly. "Speaking of the wedding, I received a letter today from my brother James. He and his family will be coming for the ceremony. They'll arrive about a week before Christmas." Brielle felt a flutter of nervousness. "I'll be glad to meet them." "Will your other brothers come as well?" Cole shook his head. "Matthew's in California, too far to travel in winter. And Daniel's wife is expecting their third child around that time, so they can't make the journey." "Well, we'll just have to visit them someday," Brielle said, then paused, realizing the implication of her words. "That is, if you'd want to travel." Cole's expression softened. "I'd like nothing better than to show you and Emma the wider world someday, Brielle. There's so much beauty out there beyond Silverdale." The idea of traveling with Cole, of seeing new places and meeting his extended family, added another layer of anticipation to Brielle's vision of their future together. She had never been more than 50 miles from Silverdale in her entire life. The possibility of broader horizons was both thrilling and slightly terrifying. "One step at a time," Cole said, seeming to read her thoughts. "First, we get married, then we can plan adventures together." The following week brought the promised cattle drive. True to his word, Cole took Emma to watch from the high window of his office. Brielle joined them, curious herself about the spectacle. The sight was indeed impressive, a sea of cattle flowing past the eastern edge of town, guided by weather-beaten cowboys on horseback. The dust cloud raised by so many hooves could be seen for miles, and the sound of lowing cattle and shouting men drifted through the open window. "Look, Mama," Emma exclaimed, pointing excitedly. "There are so many." 1,500 head, just like I said, Cole confirmed, standing behind them with a hand on each of their shoulders. "They're headed to the southern grazing lands for winter." "It's remarkable," Brielle said, watching the organized chaos below. "I've never seen so many cattle in one place." "The ranches around here are growing," Cole observed. "In a few years, drives like this will probably be even bigger." As they watched, one section of cattle seemed to grow agitated, beginning to bunch together in a way that made Cole straighten, his posture suddenly alert. "Something's wrong," he said, moving toward the door. "You two stay here. I'm going to see if they need help." Before Brielle could protest, he was gone, taking the stairs 2 at a time. From the window, she watched as he emerged from the jailhouse and mounted his horse, riding swiftly toward the edge of town where the trail boss was shouting orders to his men. "What's happening, Mama?" Emma asked, her excitement giving way to concern. "I'm not sure, sweetheart," Brielle replied, trying to keep her voice calm though her heart had begun to race. "The cattle seem upset about something." As they watched, a section of the herd suddenly broke away, perhaps spooked by a snake or wolf. The animals began running toward town, directly toward the schoolhouse where children were still in their afternoon lessons. Brielle gasped as she saw Cole and 2 cowboys race to intercept the frightened animals, trying to turn them back toward the main herd. Cole's horse moved with precision, responding instantly to his commands as he maneuvered in front of the lead steer, waving his hat to divert its course. For several tense minutes, Brielle held her breath as the men worked to regain control of the situation. Finally, the cattle were turned away from town and back toward the main herd, the danger averted. "Papa's so brave," Emma said, her eyes wide with admiration. "He wasn't scared at all." Brielle, whose heart was still pounding with fear for Cole's safety, managed to smile. "That's his job, sweetheart, to protect people." When Cole returned to the office half an hour later, dusty but unharmed, Brielle threw her arms around him in relief. "Easy there," he laughed, returning her embrace. "I'm fine, just a minor disruption." "Minor." Brielle pulled back to look at him skeptically. "Those cattle were heading straight for the school." "Well, they didn't get there, did they?" Cole replied with a wink at Emma. "All in a day's work for a sheriff." But that night, after Emma was asleep, Brielle confronted Cole on her porch. "You could have been trampled today." Cole sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It was a calculated risk, Brielle. I knew what I was doing." "This time," she said, unable to keep the edge from her voice. "But what about next time, or the time after that?" "Being a sheriff isn't exactly safe work, Cole." Cole was quiet for a moment, considering her words. No, it isn't, he finally acknowledged. But it's who I am, Brielle. It's what I do. I can't promise you I'll never be in danger, but I can promise you I'll never take unnecessary risks. I have too much to live for now. Brielle looked away, tears pricking at her eyes. I can't lose you, Cole. Emma can't lose another father. Cole gathered her into his arms, holding her close. Listen to me, Brielle Lawrence. I have no intention of leaving you or Emma. Ever. But I need you to understand that being a lawman isn't just a job to me, it's a calling. I believe in protecting people, in standing between them and harm. Brielle pressed her forehead against his chest, taking comfort in the steady beat of his heart. I know. It's one of the reasons I love you. I'm afraid. It's all right to be afraid, Cole said gently. But don't let fear rob us of joy, Brielle. We have so much to look forward to. As always, Cole's steady presence calmed her fears. Brielle knew he was right. His work was dangerous at times, but it was part of who he was, part of the man she loved. She couldn't ask him to change that, any more than he would ask her to stop being herself. I love you, she whispered, lifting her face for his kiss. Just promise me you'll always be careful. I promise, Cole murmured against her lips. Always. As November turned to December, preparations for both Christmas and the wedding occupied much of Brielle's time. She worked in the evenings on her wedding dress, a creation of ivory silk with delicate lace at the collar and cuffs, simple but elegant. Emma was to have a new dress as well, of pale blue velvet that complemented her eyes. The wedding was set for December 27th, with a reception to follow at the town hall. Nearly everyone in Silverdale had been invited, and Brielle was touched by how the community had embraced their celebration. Mrs. Wilson was organizing the food, Mr. Peterson had offered the use of his sleigh for transportation, and Reverend Hayes had promised his finest sermon for the occasion. Cole, meanwhile, had been busy preparing their new home. Though Brielle's house was comfortable enough for the three of them, Cole had purchased a larger property on the edge of town, a handsome 2-story farmhouse with a barn and corral, set on 5 acres of good land. He'd spent weeks working on repairs and improvements, often enlisting help from friends around town. 2 weeks before Christmas, a heavy snowfall blanketed Silverdale, transforming the town into a winter wonderland. Emma was beside herself with excitement, both for Christmas and for the arrival of Cole's brother and his family. Will they like me, Papa? She asked one evening as they sat by the fire, Cole whittling a wooden horse for her Christmas gift while Brielle sewed nearby. They'll love you, Cole assured her. My brother James has 2 boys, Caleb and Noah. Caleb's 8 and Noah's 5, so you'll have cousins to play with. Emma's eyes widened. Cousins? I've never had cousins before. Brielle smiled, watching the interaction with a full heart. Cole had such a natural way with Emma, never talking down to her, but always taking her questions and concerns seriously. He would be an exceptional father, both to Emma and to any children they might have together. The thought of more children, of expanding their family further, sent a warm thrill through Brielle. They hadn't discussed it explicitly, but she knew Cole wanted more children, and so did she. Perhaps in a year or two, when they were settled into their new home and new life together. A week before Christmas, Cole's brother James arrived with his wife Martha and their 2 sons. They were to stay at the hotel in town, though they spent most of their time at Brielle's house, getting acquainted with their soon-to-be family members. James was taller than Cole, but shared the same storm gray eyes and strong jaw. His manner was more reserved than his brother's, but he had a dry wit that emerged once he was comfortable. Martha was a cheerful, practical woman who instantly bonded with Brielle over sewing patterns and child-rearing stories. The boys, as Cole had predicted, were delighted with their new cousin Emma, including her in their games without hesitation. The house rang with children's laughter, a sound that made both Brielle and Cole exchange smiles of contentment. On Christmas Eve, the extended family gathered in Brielle's small sitting room. A pine tree stood in the corner, decorated with paper stars Emma had made and strung with cranberries and popcorn. Candles glowed in the windows, and the scent of gingerbread filled the air. After a hearty dinner, James proposed a toast. To Cole and Brielle, whose wedding we eagerly anticipate. May your life together be blessed with joy, health, and prosperity. And to Emma, Cole added, lifting his glass toward his soon-to-be daughter, who has made our family complete. Emma beamed with pride, raising her cup of apple cider to join the toast. Later, after the children had been put to bed with promises that Santa would come during the night, the adults sat by the fire, sharing stories and making final plans for the wedding 3 days hence. "You seem happy, little brother," James said quietly as the women discussed floral arrangements across the room. "Happier than I've seen you since Rebecca." Cole's gaze drifted to Brielle, his expression softening. "I am happy, James, more than I thought possible again." "She's good for you," James observed. "Both of them are. You've found your place here." "I have," Cole agreed. "For the first time in years, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm meant to be." Christmas Day dawned bright and cold, with fresh snow that sparkled in the morning sunlight. The children were up at dawn, exclaiming over the presents that had appeared beneath the tree overnight: new mittens and books for each of them, a wooden horse for Emma from Cole, and a porcelain doll from Brielle. Cole's gift to Brielle was a beautiful leather-bound journal with her initials embossed on the cover. "For your thoughts and dreams," he explained as she ran her fingers over the smooth leather, "and for our memories as we build our life together." Brielle had made Cole a new shirt for the wedding, of fine cotton with mother-of-pearl buttons. "It's beautiful," he said, holding it up admiringly. "You have magic in your fingers, Brielle." The day passed in a blur of good food, games, and laughter. By evening, the children were exhausted but happy, and even the adults were ready for an early night after the day's festivities. As Cole prepared to leave for his room above the jail, he would not see Brielle again until the wedding. As tradition dictated, he pulled her aside for a private moment in the kitchen. "2 more days," he murmured, holding her close. "2 more days and you'll be my wife." Brielle looked up at him, her heart so full of love she thought it might burst. "I can hardly wait." Cole bent to kiss her, a kiss full of promise and anticipation. "Sleep well, my love, dream of our future." The day before the wedding was a flurry of last-minute preparations. James and Martha took the children sledding to keep them occupied, while Brielle and Cole attended to their respective duties. Brielle had her final dress fitting with Mrs. Wilson's help, while Cole met with Reverend Hayes to review the ceremony details. That evening, following tradition, Brielle and Emma stayed with Mrs. Abernathy, while Cole returned to his room above the jail. Sleep came slowly to Brielle, her mind too full of tomorrow's significance to find easy rest. When she finally drifted off, she dreamed of Cole, of their new home, of the life stretching before them like an open road. The wedding day dawned clear and cold, the sky a perfect winter blue. Brielle woke early, a mixture of excitement and nerves fluttering in her stomach. Mrs. Abernathy brought her breakfast in bed, a luxury Brielle rarely indulged in, and helped her begin preparations for the noon ceremony. Emma was beside herself with excitement, bouncing around the room as Mrs. Abernathy arranged Brielle's hair in an elegant twist adorned with small white flowers. "Will I get to throw flower petals, Mama?" Emma asked for perhaps the 10th time that morning. "Yes, darling," Brielle answered patiently, "just as we practiced." By 11 o'clock, Brielle was dressed in her wedding gown, a vision in ivory silk that flowed gracefully to the floor. Mrs. Abernathy dabbed at her eyes as she adjusted the lace collar. "You look beautiful, my dear," the older woman said. "Absolutely beautiful." There was a knock at the door, and Martha entered, already dressed in her best blue gown. "The sleigh is here," she announced. "Are you ready, Brielle?" Brielle took a deep breath, looking at her reflection one last time. "I'm ready." The sleigh ride to the church was like something from a fairy tale, the runners gliding smoothly over the packed snow, bells jingling merrily as they went. Emma sat beside Brielle, unusually subdued as the importance of the day seemed to finally register with her. "Are you happy, Mama?" she asked suddenly, her small face serious. Brielle smiled, tucking a strand of hair behind Emma's ear. "Very happy, sweetheart. Are you?" Emma nodded solemnly. "I'm happy too. I like having a papa." Brielle's heart swelled with love for her daughter. "He loves you very much, Emma. We both do." "I know," Emma said simply, then turned to watch the passing scenery, apparently satisfied. The church was filled to capacity when they arrived. James waited at the entrance to escort Brielle down the aisle, a role he had insisted on fulfilling in the absence of Brielle's own father, who had passed many years before. "Cole's inside," James informed her with a grin. Nervous as a cat in a room full of rocking chairs, though he's trying not to show it. Brielle laughed, the sound slightly shaky with her own nerves. "That makes two of us." As the organ began to play, Emma proceeded down the aisle first, carefully dropping rose petals from a small basket. Martha and Mrs. Abernathy followed, and then it was Brielle's turn. With James's arm supporting her, Brielle stepped into the church and saw Cole for the first time that day. He stood at the altar in a new black suit, his hair neatly combed, his face clean-shaven. But it was his expression that caught and held her the look of absolute wonder and love as he watched her approach. In that moment, any lingering nervousness vanished. This was right. This was exactly where she was meant to be, walking toward this man who had brought love back into her life when she'd thought it gone forever. The ceremony itself passed in a blur of emotion. Brielle was aware of Reverend Hayes's solemn voice, of the familiar words of the marriage service, of Cole's hand warm and steady in hers as they exchanged vows. When he slipped the gold band onto her finger, his hands trembled slightly, and Brielle felt a surge of tenderness at this rare display of vulnerability from her strong, steady Cole. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Reverend Hayes declared finally. "You may kiss your bride." Cole's kiss was gentle but filled with promise, appropriate for a church full of witnesses but hinting at deeper passions to come. When they turned to face the congregation as Mr. and Mrs. Cole Lawson, Brielle felt as though her feet barely touched the ground. The reception at the town hall was a joyous affair. It seemed all of Silverdale had turned out to celebrate with them, bringing gifts and well wishes. There was dancing and laughter, cake and punch, and speeches that made Brielle alternately laugh and cry. Emma danced standing on Cole's boots, her face alight with happiness as he guided her around the floor. Later, she fell asleep in James's arms, worn out by the day's excitement. As the celebration began to wind down, Cole drew Brielle aside. "Ready to see our home, Mrs. Lawson?" he asked, his voice low and intimate. Brielle nodded, suddenly shy. "Yes, very ready." They said their goodbyes, leaving Emma in Martha and James's care for the night. Outside, Mr. Peterson's sleigh awaited them once more, this time to take them to their new home on the edge of town. The house looked magical in the winter twilight, windows glowing with the lamps Cole had asked Deputy Miller to light before their arrival. A wreath of pine boughs hung on the front door, and smoke curled invitingly from the chimney. Cole helped Brielle from the sleigh, then surprised her by sweeping her into his arms. "Tradition," he explained with a grin as he carried her up the porch steps and across the threshold. Inside, the house was warm and welcoming. Cole had furnished it simply but comfortably, with some pieces Brielle recognized from her own home mixed with new items he'd purchased. "Do you like it?" he asked, a touch of uncertainty in his voice as he set her down in the front hall. Brielle turned slowly, taking in the polished woodwork, the cheerful curtains at the windows, the comfortable chairs drawn up before the fire. "It's perfect," she said honestly. "Absolutely perfect." Cole's arms came around her from behind, drawing her back against his chest. "Welcome home, Mrs. Lawson," he murmured, his lips finding the sensitive spot just below her ear. Brielle turned in his embrace, looping her arms around his neck. "I love you, Cole." His eyes darkened as he bent to capture her lips in a kiss far more passionate than the one they'd shared in church. "And I love you, Brielle, more than I have words to express." Later, much later, as they lay entwined in the large bed that dominated the master bedroom, Brielle rested her head on Cole's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. His fingers traced lazy patterns on her bare shoulder, occasionally straying to the curve of her breast in a touch that was both possessive and reverent. "Happy?" he asked softly. Brielle smiled, pressing a kiss to his skin. "Completely, you." "More than I ever thought possible," Cole replied, his arms tightening around her. "I never expected to find this again, Brielle. After Rebecca, I thought this part of my life was over. Brielle propped herself up on one elbow to look at him. I felt the same way after Thomas, but here we are. Here we are, Cole agreed, drawing her down for another kiss. Outside, snow began to fall again, covering the world in a fresh blanket of white, like a clean page waiting for their story to be written upon it. The first months of marriage passed in a haze of happiness for Brielle. She, Cole, and Emma settled into their new home and new routines with surprising ease, as if they had always been meant to be a family. Emma started the new term at school with renewed confidence, proudly telling her friends about her new papa and their new house with the big yard where she could play. Brielle continued to run her dress shop, though with Cole's steady income as sheriff, she was able to take fewer orders and spend more time at home. She took particular pleasure in making their house truly theirs, sewing new curtains, arranging and rearranging furniture, planting a kitchen garden as soon as the spring thaw allowed. Cole remained devoted to his duties as sheriff, but he was equally committed to his new role as husband and father. He never missed supper with his family if he could help it, and he spent his days off teaching Emma to ride the gentle mare he'd bought for her birthday in February. One evening in late April, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset after Emma had gone to bed, Brielle gathered her courage to broach a subject that had been on her mind increasingly of late. "Cole," she began, nestling against his side on the swing, "have you thought about? That is, would you want?" She paused, suddenly uncharacteristically shy. Cole looked down at her, amusement in his eyes. "Brielle Lawson, are you actually at a loss for words? This must be serious." Brielle laughed, relaxing slightly. "It is serious. I've been thinking about our family, about possibly expanding it." Cole's expression softened and his arm tightened around her shoulders. "You mean a baby?" Brielle nodded. "Emma's always wanted a brother or sister, and I thought perhaps, if you wanted." "I want," Cole said firmly, turning to take her face in his hands. "God, Brielle, yes, I want a child with you more than I can say." The naked emotion in his voice brought tears to Brielle's eyes. Even after what happened before with Rebecca. Cole was quiet for a moment, his thumbs gently wiping away the tears that had spilled onto her cheeks. "What happened with Rebecca was a tragedy that nearly destroyed me," he said finally. "But it was also 8 years ago in a town with no proper doctor. Here we have Dr. Sullivan, who's delivered more babies than I can count, and you, my love, are strong and healthy." He pressed his forehead to hers. "Yes, the thought scares me. I won't pretend it doesn't, but I want this with you, Brielle. I want to see you round with our child, want to hold a baby that's part you and part me in my arms." Brielle's heart swelled with love for this man, who continued to be so honest with her, who shared his fears as readily as his hopes. "Then perhaps we should start trying," she suggested, a hint of mischief entering her voice. "Practice makes perfect, after all," Cole laughed, standing and pulling her to her feet. "In that case, Mrs. Lawson, I think we should practice immediately." He led her inside, locking the door behind them before sweeping her into his arms and carrying her upstairs to their bedroom. In the weeks that followed, Brielle found herself watching for signs of pregnancy with mounting anticipation. She didn't mention her hopes to Emma yet, not wanting to disappoint her daughter if it took time, but she and Cole shared private smiles when Emma occasionally mentioned wanting a baby brother or sister, like Sarah Jenkins has. Spring bloomed fully in Silverdale, bringing with it new challenges for Cole as the improving weather meant increased travel through the area, both legitimate travelers and the occasional troublemakers. He was busier than he had been during the winter months, sometimes being called away from home in the middle of the night to deal with disturbances at the saloon or disputes between ranchers and farmers over water rights or grazing boundaries. Despite these demands on his time, Cole remained a devoted husband and father, always making time for his family even when exhaustion was evident in the lines of his face. Brielle did her best to support him, ensuring hot meals were available whenever he came home and creating a peaceful haven for him to return to. In early June, Brielle awoke one morning feeling distinctly unwell. She barely made it to the wash basin before emptying the contents of her stomach, a wave of dizziness washing over her as she straightened. Cole was instantly at her side, his hand gentle on her back. Brielle, are you all right? She turned to him, a tremulous smile forming despite her discomfort. I think I might be pregnant. Cole's expression transformed from concern to wonder in an instant. Really, are you sure? Not completely, Brielle admitted. But I'm late and now this. She gestured to the basin. I felt the same way when I was carrying Emma. Cole gathered her carefully into his arms, as if she had suddenly become fragile and precious. We should see Dr. Sullivan to be certain. Dr. Sullivan confirmed their suspicions later that day. Brielle was indeed pregnant, approximately 6 weeks along, with the baby expected to arrive in early February. Everything appears normal, the doctor assured them, noting the anxiety in Cole's eyes. Brielle is young and healthy. I anticipate no complications. Cole's relief was palpable as they left the doctor's office. February, he said, his voice filled with wonder. A winter baby, just like Emma, Brielle replied, squeezing his hand. She was born in January. They decided to wait another month before telling Emma, wanting to be past the most vulnerable early stage of pregnancy. When they finally shared the news with her over Sunday dinner in July, her reaction was everything they could have hoped for: a baby. She exclaimed, her eyes wide with excitement. A real baby. When will it come? Will it be a brother or a sister? Can I help take care of it? Cole laughed, ruffling her hair affectionately. Yes, a real baby. It will come after Christmas, and we don't know yet if it will be a boy or a girl. And of course you can help. You'll be a wonderful big sister. Emma beamed with pride. I'm going to teach the baby everything I know, and I'll read to it and show it how to draw, and you'll have to be patient, Brielle interjected gently. Babies are very small at first. It will be some time before your brother or sister is old enough to learn all those things. Emma considered this, then nodded solemnly. I can be patient. Papa says patience is a virtue. Cole winked at Brielle over Emma's head. Your papa is a very wise man. As summer progressed into fall, Brielle's condition became increasingly evident. Her dresses needed letting out, and she found herself tiring more easily than before. Cole was attentive to her every need, often taking over household tasks or arranging for Emma to spend time with friends so Brielle could rest. The town was equally supportive, with the women of Silverdale bringing casseroles and offering advice, some welcome, some less so. Mrs. Wilson insisted on making new maternity dresses for Brielle, refusing payment and saying only, "You brought our share of happiness. Consider it my way of saying thank you." In October, as Brielle entered her 6th month of pregnancy, an unexpected visitor arrived in Silverdale. Brielle was in her shop, now open only 3 days a week as her pregnancy advanced, when the bell above the door jingled. She looked up to see a man she didn't recognize, tall and lean, with a weather-beaten face and eyes that seemed vaguely familiar. "Can I help you?" she asked, setting aside the baby gown she'd been embroidering. The man removed his hat, revealing hair the same dark shade as Cole's, though liberally streaked with gray. "Mrs. Lawson, I'm Matthew Lawson, Cole's brother." Brielle's surprise gave way quickly to pleasure. "Matthew. Cole will be so glad to see you. He didn't mention you were coming." "He doesn't know," Matthew admitted. "I've been in California for years, but I'm heading east now. Thought I'd stop and see my little brother on the way." His eyes dropped to Brielle's rounded belly. "And meet his new family, it seems. Congratulations are in order." "Thank you," Brielle said, smiling as she rested a hand on her stomach. "The baby's due in February. Please come to the house for supper tonight. Cole will be so surprised." Matthew accepted the invitation, and that evening's reunion between the brothers was emotional to witness. Cole had not seen Matthew in nearly 10 years, and the two men embraced for a long moment before breaking apart, both suspiciously damp-eyed. "You should have written that you were coming," Cole admonished, though his smile belied any real annoyance. "And missed the look on your face," Matthew countered. "Not a chance." Emma was fascinated by this new uncle, who told exciting stories of gold mining in California and promised to take her fishing during his stay. Matthew, in turn, seemed charmed by his niece's precocious questions and enthusiastic nature. Later, after Emma had gone to bed, the adults sat around the fire, catching up on years of family news. Matthew had never married, preferring the freedom of the prospector's life, though he admitted he'd found little gold and was now considering settling down somewhere in the Midwest. "You could stay here," Cole suggested. "Silverdale's growing. We could use a man with your experience." Matthew laughed, shaking his head. "Always trying to tie me down, little brother. Some things never change." But over the next few days, as Matthew explored the town and surrounding countryside, Brielle noticed him looking at Silverdale with increasingly thoughtful eyes. He spent time with Cole at the sheriff's office, rode out to some of the nearby ranches, and even attended Sunday services with them, drawing curious glances from the townspeople. A week into his visit, at supper one evening, Matthew cleared his throat. "I've been thinking about your offer, Cole." "About staying in Silverdale." Cole looked up sharply. And I'm considering it," Matthew said slowly. "There's a small cabin for sale on the north side of town, needs work but it's solid, and the owner of the Lucky Strike Saloon mentioned he's looking for a partner." Cole's face broke into a grin. "You, a saloon owner, Pa would roll over in his grave," Matthew laughed. "Half owner, and someone's got to keep the whiskey flowing in this town, might as well be family." The brothers shook hands on it, and just like that, another Lawson became a permanent resident of Silverdale. Matthew's presence was a blessing as Brielle's pregnancy advanced. He often took Emma fishing or hiking, giving Brielle time to rest and Cole the freedom to focus on his duties without worrying about his family being alone. The holidays approached, and with them, preparations for the baby's arrival. Cole converted the small room adjacent to their bedroom into a nursery, painting the walls a soft yellow suitable for either a boy or a girl. He explained in crafting a cradle from pine with his own hands. Brielle, meanwhile, sewed tiny garments and blankets, her heart full of anticipation. This pregnancy had been easier than her first in many ways, perhaps because she was older and knew what to expect, or perhaps because she had Cole's unwavering support throughout. Christmas was a joyous affair, with Matthew joining them and Emma vibrating with excitement over both her presence and the impending arrival of her sibling. Cole's gift to Brielle was a silver rattle, engraved with the baby's expected birth month. "It's beautiful," Brielle said, running her fingers over the smooth silver. "Our baby will love it." Cole's hand covered hers, both resting on her rounded belly. "Our baby," he repeated, wonder still evident in his voice. "I still can't quite believe it sometimes." January brought heavy snows and bitter cold. Brielle, now in her 9th month, rarely left the house, finding the icy streets too treacherous to navigate with her ungainly form. Cole was equally reluctant to leave her, often sending Deputy Miller to handle routine matters while he remained close to home. "I'm not due for another 3 weeks," Brielle reminded him one evening as he paced near the window, watching a brewing snowstorm with concern. "You can't neglect your duties for that long." Cole turned to her, his expression serious. "You and this baby are my most important duty, Brielle. Everything else can wait." Emma, who had been playing with her doll nearby, looked up. "Is the baby coming soon, Mama?" "Not too soon, I hope," Brielle replied, wincing slightly as the baby delivered a particularly strong kick. "But when it's ready." As it happened, the baby had its own schedule in mind. 2 nights later, Brielle woke in the darkness to a sharp pain and a rush of fluid. She reached for Cole, shaking him awake. "Cole, it's time." He was instantly alert, leaping from the bed to light the lamp. "Are you sure? It's early." Another contraction answered his question, making Brielle gasp. "I'm sure. We need to send for Dr. Sullivan." Cole was already pulling on his clothes. "I'll go myself. It's still snowing, the roads will be bad." "Wake Matthew first," Brielle instructed through gritted teeth as another pain seized her. "I don't want Emma to be alone if she wakes up." Cole nodded, pressing a kiss to her forehead before hurrying from the room. Brielle heard his rapid footsteps on the stairs, then low voices as he roused Matthew. Minutes later, the front door closed, and she knew Cole was on his way to town to fetch the doctor. Matthew appeared in the doorway, concern evident on his face. "What can I do, Brielle?" "Help me walk," she said, extending a hand. "Moving helps with the pain." For the next hour, Matthew supported Brielle as she paced the bedroom, pausing only when contractions made walking impossible. He kept up a steady stream of conversation, clearly trying to distract her, telling stories of his and Cole's childhood that made her laugh despite her discomfort. The contractions were coming faster now, and Brielle was beginning to worry. Where was Cole with the doctor? The storm outside had worsened, the wind howling around the eaves of the house like a living thing. "I need to lie down," she told Matthew, the pain becoming too intense for movement. "The baby's coming soon." Matthew helped her back to the bed, his expression alarmed. "Should I?" "Do you need me to?" Brielle managed a smile at his obvious discomfort. "Just stay with me until Cole returns. Talk to me. Tell me more about Cole as a boy." Matthew settled into a chair beside the bed, visibly relieved to have clear instructions. "Well, he was always the serious one, even as a child. Always looking out for everyone else, taking responsibility." Brielle listened between contractions, focusing on Matthew's voice as an anchor against the waves of pain. An hour passed, then another. Still no sign of Cole or the doctor. "Something's wrong," Brielle gasped after a particularly strong contraction. "They should have been here by now." Matthew moved to the window, peering out into the storm. The snow's really coming down, might have slowed them up. As if summoned by their concern, the sound of the front door opening reached them, followed by stamping feet and voices. "Upstairs," Matthew called. "We're in the bedroom." Dr. Sullivan appeared in the doorway, snow still clinging to his coat and beard. Behind him, Cole's face was pale with cold and worry. "Sorry for the delay," the doctor said briskly, moving to Brielle's side. "Bridge was iced over, had to find another way across the creek." He turned to Matthew. "If you'll excuse us, Mr. Lawson." Matthew retreated gratefully, and Cole took his place beside Brielle, taking her hand in his cold one. "I'm here," he said, pressing his lips to her knuckles. "I'm right here, Brielle." The next 2 hours were a blur of pain and effort for Brielle. Doctor Sullivan was calm and efficient, guiding her through the process with practiced ease. Cole remained steadfast at her side, his hand in hers, his voice a constant reassurance in her ear. Just as dawn was breaking, with a final, tremendous effort, Brielle brought their child into the world. The baby's cry, strong and indignant, filled the room, and Dr. Sullivan's face broke into a broad smile. "A healthy boy," he announced, placing the squalling infant on Brielle's chest. "Congratulations, Sheriff, you have a son." Cole stared at the tiny, red-faced being in wonder, tears streaming unashamedly down his cheeks. "A son," he whispered, reaching out a tentative finger to touch the baby's clenched fist. "Brielle, we have a son." Brielle looked down at their child, overwhelmed with love and gratitude. Despite being 3 weeks early, he was perfect, a tuft of dark hair like Cole's, Brielle's delicate nose, tiny fingers that curled reflexively around his father's larger one. "Thomas," she said softly. "Thomas Cole Lawson. For both the fathers he'll never know." Cole's eyes met hers, full of understanding and love. "It's perfect. He's perfect." After Dr. Sullivan had checked both mother and baby and pronounced them healthy, he took his leave, promising to return the following day. Cole went to wake Emma, who had slept through the entire ordeal, to meet her new brother. She entered the room cautiously, her eyes huge as she approached the bed where Brielle cradled the now sleeping infant. "This is your brother, Emma," Brielle said gently. "His name is Thomas." Emma leaned in, studying the tiny face with intense concentration. "He's so small," she whispered. "And red." Cole laughed softly, lifting Emma onto the bed for a better view. "All babies are like that at first. He'll grow." Emma reached out to touch Thomas's cheek with one careful finger. "Hello, Thomas," she said solemnly. "I'm your big sister. I'm going to take care of you and teach you everything I know." The baby stirred, his tiny mouth working in his sleep, and Emma gasped in delight. "He heard me. He knows who I am already." Cole and Brielle exchanged smiles over their children's heads. In that moment, with the storm outside subsiding and sunlight beginning to filter through the curtains, their family felt complete in a way that neither had dared hope for in the dark days after their first losses. Later, after Emma had gone downstairs with Matthew for breakfast and Cole had changed into dry clothes, he returned to Brielle's side, sitting carefully on the edge of the bed where she nursed their son. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice gentle. "Truly." Brielle looked up from Thomas's peaceful face. "I'm tired, but yes, I'm fine, we both are." Cole's expression grew serious. When I was riding for the doctor and the bridge was out and I had to take the long way around, I was so afraid, Brielle, afraid I wouldn't make it back in time. Afraid of losing you both. Brielle reached for his hand. But you did make it. You always do, Cole. That's who you are. Cole lifted her hand to his lips. I made a promise to myself when I asked you to marry me. A promise that I would always be there when you needed me, that I would never let you down. His voice broke slightly. Today I almost broke that promise. No, Brielle said firmly. You did everything you could. The storm, the bridge, those things were beyond your control. What matters is that you didn't give up. You found another way. Cole's gaze dropped to their son, still nursing contentedly. He's so small, so vulnerable. It terrifies me, Brielle, the thought of anything happening to him or to Emma or to you. I know, Brielle said softly. Being a parent means living with that fear every day. But it also means experiencing joy like this, watching our children grow, teaching them, loving them. She squeezed his hand. We can't protect them from everything, Cole. All we can do is love them and prepare them as best we can for the world. Cole nodded slowly, his free hand coming to rest gently on Thomas's downy head. I promise you this, son, he said quietly. I will always come for you. I will always be there when you need me. Always. As if in response, Thomas released Brielle's breast and opened his eyes, looking up at his father with an unfocused gaze. Cole's breath caught, and he bent to press a kiss to his son's forehead. Welcome to the world, Thomas Cole Lawson, he whispered. Your mama and I have been waiting for you. The years passed, as years do, marked by the milestones of their children's growth and the changing seasons of their lives together. Thomas grew from a colicky infant into a sturdy toddler with his father's determined streak and his mother's gentle heart. Emma blossomed into a thoughtful, creative young woman who excelled at school and dreamed of becoming a teacher herself one day. Cole continued as sheriff of Silverdale, his reputation for fairness and integrity spreading throughout the territory. Brielle's dress shop thrived, though she kept shorter hours now to have more time with her family. When Thomas was 3, Brielle gave birth to their second child, together a daughter they named Sarah Rebecca, honoring both Cole's first wife and Brielle's mother. Sarah was a sunny child from the start, with Brielle's golden hair and Cole's storm-gray eyes, the perfect completion to their family. Matthew remained in Silverdale, becoming a respected businessman as co-owner of the Lucky Strike Saloon, which under his guidance became known as the most orderly establishment of its kind for 50 miles. He never married but became an integral part of the Lawson family, the beloved uncle who always had time for his nieces and nephew, who taught them to fish and ride and whittle, who spoiled them outrageously at Christmas and birthdays. There were challenges, of course, as there are in any life. A drought that threatened the region's farms and ranches. A scarlet fever outbreak that had them all holding their breath as Emma fell ill, though she recovered fully. The occasional outbreak of violence that was inevitable in a frontier town, bringing with it the ever-present fear that one day Cole might not come home. But through it all, Cole and Brielle's love remained constant, deepening and strengthening with each passing year. They faced each challenge together, their partnership a source of strength and comfort through both good times and bad. Emma was 12, Thomas 6, and Sarah 3 when an incident occurred that would be remembered in family stories for generations to come. It began on an ordinary Tuesday in May. Cole had ridden out early to investigate reports of cattle rustling on the Henderson ranch, promising to be home by supper. Brielle spent the day at her shop, leaving the younger children with Mrs. Abernathy, who despite her advancing years still enjoyed caring for the Lawson children occasionally. When Brielle arrived home with Thomas and Sarah in tow, she was surprised to find Emma already there, having walked home from school alone, something she was allowed to do but rarely chose to, usually preferring to stop by her mother's shop first. Papa isn't back yet? Emma asked as they entered the house. Not yet, sweetheart, Brielle replied, helping Sarah remove her shoes. He said he might be late. The Henderson ranch is a good ride from town. Emma's face fell slightly, but he promised to help me with my presentation for school tomorrow. On the Constitution. I'm sure he'll be home in time, Brielle assured her, but if not, I can help you, or Uncle Matthew. The evening progressed, supper was prepared and eaten, and still Cole did not return. Brielle tried to hide her growing concern from the children, but Emma, perceptive as always, noticed her frequent glances toward the window. "You're worried about Papa," she said as they washed the dishes together. Brielle managed a smile. "Just a little." "But your father can take care of himself, Emma. He's probably just delayed." By bedtime, however, Cole had still not returned, and Brielle's concern had deepened into genuine worry. It wasn't like Cole to be this late without sending word. After tucking the younger children into bed, she found Emma sitting on the front porch, staring down the dark road that led to town. "He promised," Emma said, her voice small. "He promised he'd help me tonight." Brielle sat beside her daughter, putting an arm around her shoulders. "I know, sweetheart. I'm sure something important must have come up." Emma leaned against her mother. "What if something bad happened to him, like what happened to my first papa?" Brielle's heart clenched at the fear in her daughter's voice. "Your papa is fine, Emma. He's probably still out at the Henderson ranch, and it was too late to ride back in the dark. He'll be here in the morning, you'll see." But morning came, and Cole did not. Brielle sent the children to school with forced cheerfulness, promising that their father would be home when they returned. As soon as they were gone, she hitched the wagon and drove into town, her stomach tight with fear. At the sheriff's office, Deputy Miller confirmed her worst fears. Cole had not returned to town either, nor had he sent any message. "I was just about to ride out to Henderson's myself," Miller said, his young face creased with worry. "Sheriff Lawson isn't one to disappear without word." "I'm coming with you," Brielle said, in a tone that brooked no argument. They stopped first at the dress shop to inform Mrs. Wilson that Brielle would not be opening today, then rode out of town toward the Henderson ranch. The May morning was beautiful, wildflowers dotting the prairie, but Brielle barely noticed, her mind filled with increasingly dire scenarios. At the Henderson ranch, they found more cause for concern. According to Mrs. Henderson, Cole had indeed visited the previous morning to investigate the rustling, but had left around noon, heading not back to town but south, toward the border of their property where the cattle had gone missing. "Said he saw some tracks he wanted to follow," Mrs. Henderson explained. "Thought it might lead him to the rustlers' camp." Brielle and Deputy Miller rode south, following the directions Mrs. Henderson had given them. After an hour, they found Cole's horse, grazing freely near a small creek, the reins dragging on the ground. "That's not good," Miller muttered, dismounting to examine the area. "Sheriff would never leave his horse like this unless something happened." They searched the surrounding area, calling Cole's name. It was Miller who found the first sign of trouble, a patch of flattened grass with dark stains that could only be blood. "Looks like there was a struggle," he said grimly, "and someone was injured." Brielle's heart pounded painfully in her chest. "We need to keep looking. He could be hurt, unable to walk back to his horse." They widened their search, and it was Brielle who finally found him, half hidden in a thicket of brush near the creek. Cole was unconscious, his face pale beneath a layer of dirt and dried blood from a wound on his temple. His breathing was shallow but steady, and when Brielle called his name, his eyelids fluttered though they did not open. "Cole, Cole, can you hear me?" Brielle cradled his head in her lap, wiping away blood with her handkerchief to better see the injury. Deputy Miller crouched beside them. "Looks like he was hit from behind, probably ambushed by the rustlers. We need to get him to doctor." "Sullivan," Brielle said, forcing calm into her voice though her hands trembled. "Help me get him on his horse." Together, they managed to lift Cole onto his horse. Brielle mounted behind him, supporting his unconscious form against her chest while Miller led the horse carefully back toward town. The journey seemed endless, Cole's weight heavy against her, his breathing the only reassurance that he still lived. By the time they reached Dr. Sullivan's office, word had spread through town that the sheriff had been found injured. A small crowd had gathered, parting silently to let them through. Matthew was there, his face grim as he helped carry his brother inside. Dr. Sullivan examined Cole thoroughly, cleaning the head wound and checking for other injuries. "Concussion, certainly," he pronounced finally. "Possibly a skull fracture, though I don't think it's severe. He's lucky a blow like this could have killed him." "Will he recover?" Brielle asked, her voice steady despite the fear churning inside her. I believe so, Sullivan replied cautiously. But head injuries can be unpredictable. We won't know for certain until he wakes up. Matthew squeezed Brielle's shoulder. I'll get word to the school, let the children know he's been found. They can come here after classes end. Brielle nodded gratefully, her eyes never leaving Cole's still form on the examination table. Thank you, Matthew. The hours that followed were among the longest of Brielle's life. Cole remained unconscious, though occasionally he would stir or mumble something indistinct. Doctor. Sullivan assured her this was a good sign, that his brain was still functioning. But Brielle wouldn't believe it until she saw Cole's eyes open, until he recognized her. The children arrived after school, their faces solemn as they entered the doctor's office. Emma, at 12, tried to be brave, but her lower lip trembled as she looked at her father's pale face. Thomas was confused and frightened, while little Sarah simply climbed onto the chair beside the examination table and patted Cole's hand, saying, "Wake up, Papa. Please wake up." Evening came, and still Cole did not fully wake. Dr. Sullivan suggested moving him to a proper bed in one of the recovery rooms at the back of his office. It could be hours yet, or even tomorrow, he warned. You should take the children home, get some rest. We're not leaving, Emma said firmly before Brielle could respond. We're staying with Papa. Brielle looked at her daughter's determined face, so like Cole's when his mind was made up, and nodded. We'll stay, all of us. Matthew brought blankets and food from the house, setting up makeshift beds for the children in the recovery room. By 9 o'clock, Thomas and Sarah were asleep, curled together on a pallet in the corner. Emma, however, remained stubbornly awake, sitting in a chair by her father's bedside, her hand holding his. You should rest, Emma, Brielle said gently. Your father wouldn't want you exhausting yourself. Emma shook her head. I want to be awake when he wakes up. I need to ask him something. Brielle didn't press the issue, understanding her daughters need to see for herself that Cole would be all right. They sat together in silence, the only sounds the soft breathing of the younger children and the occasional creak of the building settling for the night. It was just past midnight when Cole stirred more decisively, his eyelids fluttering before finally opening. He blinked several times, confusion evident in his gaze as he tried to make sense of his surroundings. Cole, Brielle leaned forward, hope surging through her. Can you hear me? His eyes found hers, and the confusion in them cleared somewhat. Brielle, his voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. What happened? You were attacked, she told him, tears of relief spilling down her cheeks. At the Henderson Ranch, you've been unconscious for almost a day. Cole's gaze shifted to Emma, who was now standing beside the bed, her face a mixture of relief and something else, something that looked almost like anger. Emma, he said, attempting a smile that turned into a wince of pain. You're here too. Emma's chin trembled, but her voice was steady when she spoke. Why didn't you come? The question hung in the air between them. Cole's brow furrowed slightly. What? You promised, Emma said, her voice rising slightly. You promised you'd help me with my presentation. You promised you'd be home. Why didn't you come? Emma, Brielle began. Your father was hurt. He couldn't. It's all right, Brielle, Cole interrupted, his eyes never leaving Emma's face. For a long moment he was silent, studying his daughter's expression, seeing the fear behind her anger. Then with visible effort he raised his hand to take hers. I'm sorry, Emma, he said simply. You're right. I made a promise and I didn't keep it. I followed those tracks without waiting for backup, without sending word, and that was a mistake. Emma's anger seemed to deflate, replaced by the tears she'd been holding back. I was so scared, she whispered. I thought you might never come back like my first papa. Cole tugged gently on her hand, drawing her closer. Come here, sweetheart. Emma leaned down, and Cole wrapped his arm around her, holding her as she finally gave in to her tears. I promise you, Emma Lawrence Lawson, he said, his voice stronger now despite his injury, I will never willingly leave you, not ever. Sometimes my job takes me away for a while, and sometimes, like today, things happen that I can't control. But I will always, always come back to you and your mother and your brother and sister. Do you understand? Emma nodded against his shoulder, her tears gradually subsiding. I understand, Papa. Good, Cole said, pressing a kiss to her hair. Now about that presentation on the Constitution. It's tomorrow, Emma reminded him, sitting up and wiping her eyes. Then we'd better get to work, Cole said, attempting to sit up before Brielle gently pushed him back down. You are not getting out of that bed, Cole Lawson, she said firmly. Doctor's orders. Cole grimaced but didn't argue. Fetch your notes, Emma. We'll work from here. Emma hurried to retrieve her schoolbooks from where Matthew had left them. While she was gone, Brielle leaned down to kiss Cole gently. You scared me half to death, she murmured against his lips. I'm sorry, he replied, reaching up to touch her cheek. For frightening you, for worrying the children. Just focus on getting better, Brielle told him. Everything else can wait. Emma returned with her notes, and for the next hour, despite his injury, Cole helped her refine her presentation on the Constitution. Brielle watched them, her heart full of love and gratitude. Even injured, even after such a scare, Cole's first thought was for his family, for keeping his promise to his daughter. By morning, Dr. Sullivan pronounced Cole well enough to be moved home, though he insisted on complete bed rest for at least a week and no return to full duties for at least 2. Matthew and Deputy Miller helped transport Cole back to the house, where he was installed in the downstairs guest room to avoid the stairs. The next 2 weeks were a time of healing and reflection for the entire family. Cole's physical recovery progressed steadily, the headaches and dizziness gradually subsiding, though a faint scar remained at his temple where Dr. Sullivan had stitched the wound. The rustlers who had attacked him were caught 3 days after the incident when they tried to sell the stolen cattle in the next county. Deputy Miller, along with a posse of local ranchers, brought them back to Silverdale to face justice. Emma's presentation on the Constitution earned her top marks at school, a fact she proudly reported to Cole, who was still confined to bed when she received the news. It was because of your help, Papa, she told him, perched on the edge of his bed. Even though you were hurt, you still made sure I was ready. Cole smiled, reaching out to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear. You did the hard work, Emma. I just helped with the finishing touches. As Cole recovered, Brielle noticed a subtle change in him, a new caution, a deeper appreciation for the fragility of life. He spoke more openly with the children about the risks of his job, but also about the importance of the work he did. He began teaching Thomas and Emma basic survival skills: how to start a fire, how to find their way by the stars, how to signal for help if they were ever lost or in trouble. I want them to be prepared, he explained to Brielle one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset. For whatever life might bring, Brielle leaned against his shoulder. You're a good father, Cole, the best the children could ask for. Cole was quiet for a moment, his arm tightening around her. When I was lying there after they hit me, he said finally, my last thought before everything went dark was of you and the children, of all the things I still wanted to tell you to teach them. And now you can, Brielle said softly. We have time, Cole, years ahead of us. Cole turned to look at her, his eyes reflecting the golden light of the setting sun. I love you, Brielle Lawson, more today than yesterday and not as much as tomorrow. And I love you, Brielle replied, her heart full to bursting with the simple truth of it. Today, tomorrow, and all the days to come. As they sat together, the children's laughter drifted through the open window behind them, Emma reading a story to her siblings, Thomas interrupting with questions, little Sarah demanding to see the pictures. The sounds of their family, whole and happy and safe. In that moment, Brielle knew with absolute certainty that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, she and Cole and their children, bound by love and strengthened by the promises they had made and kept to one another. The promise to cherish, the promise to protect, the promise never to leave, promises that would endure like their love through all the seasons of their lives together.